as she could, but even she had expenses, if only minimal ones. Her house, for example, she'd inherited outright 6 months earlier, along with the pub from old Mick Sullivan, but no matter how much she scrimped, she still had to pay for electricity and gas for cooking and heating. She hadn't needed much heat yet, but that could change. She hadn't even been in the country through a winter yet. She'd been told that it never got really cold in this part of Ireland, something about the ocean currents. She'd even seen palm trees here and there, which always startled her. Still, these old stone and stucco cottages were hard to keep warm. Was she supposed to be laying in peat, or turf as they called it here, or wood? She could just see herself in the middle of a damp winter, huddling over a small pile of smoky, burning moss, trying to keep warm. Not the life you imagined back in Boston, Maura. And then there was the car. She was driving an ancient Peugeot on an extended loan, somewhere short of a gift from Bridget Nolan down the lane. But Maura couldn't expect Bridget to pay upkeep on the car that had belonged to her late husband, and she didn't like to take charity from anyone. She was happy to pay her own way and willing to work hard, but there was so much she didn't know. Old Mick had kindly left her some money to tide her over when she took over the pub, but that wasn't going to last much longer, which left the whole mess in her lap. For a moment, Maura looked back on her days as a bar waitress with something like nostalgia. It sure was easier when all she'd had to do was show up and serve people, then collect a paycheck and some tips if she was lucky. Of course, she could walk away from Sullivan's if she couldn't make the numbers work. What would be the point of staying open just to lose money? The real estate market in Ireland was still down, but the pub license had to be worth something, didn't it? And it was hers to sell. She hadn't yet run through all the money old Mick had left to her. She could take that and go anywhere. Except she didn't know where to go. She didn't feel any strong need to go back to Boston. Now that Gran was gone, there was nothing for her there. And she had Jimmy and Rose and Mick depending on her, and she didn't want to turn them out when there weren't enough jobs to go around. And maybe the new owners wouldn't be so kind to old Billy Sheehan, a longtime friend of old Mick's, and a fixture in the well-worn armchair by the pub fireplace. Or maybe they'd tear down the place altogether and put in a shiny, modern place of some sort and change the town. Maura sighed. Not easy being an owner. Maybe it got better with practice. She stretched, then checked her watch. Nearly 10 a.m., and she should be opening the pub by 10:30. Too late to start anything now, Maura? She told herself. She stood up, pulled on a sweater hanging by the door, and went out the front door of her house. She had no near neighbors. At one end of the lane where it petered out, there was a house that hadn't been lived in for years, although the owners still kept sheep and cows on the pasture. The house on the other side of hers had been abandoned even longer, and she guessed it had been in ruin since before she was born. There were other, newer houses up the hill in front of her, and a few farther down the hill, not that she often saw the people who lived there. And then there was Bridget's cottage, on the lane that led from the top to the bottom of the hill. Maura decided to stop in and say good morning before she left for the village. She picked her way along the muddy, unpaved lane toward Bridget's house, pulling her sweater close. It was September now, with the tourist season just ending. The days were getting shorter and the wind sharper. She knocked on the front door of Bridget's cottage, which was smaller even than hers. She knew Mick, Bridget's grandson, made sure it was kept up and paid for his grand's phone so she could reach him in an emergency. Bridget was well into her 80s, but refused to consider moving in with Mick's sister a few towns over. This townland called Knoxca, or Hawthorne Hill, was her home, and she wouldn't be moved from it. She'd settled into the cottage when she married and had lived here all her adult life. Maura might have wondered if Bridget got lonely, if she hadn't seen the steady trickle of friends and relatives who stopped by to make sure the old woman was all right and to swap gossip and news. It was nice knowing that people were looking out for you. Her gran had done a lot of looking out for the struggling Irish immigrants who'd arrived in Boston. "Ah, Gia Ditcha Waira." Bridget opened the door with a broad smile. "Gia's Maura